Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's the podcast show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. A lot of the time, it doesn't. And today, we're going to be talking about something that I don't think makes any sense. I assume everybody has seen this article in Forbes magazine or Forbes Online.
Mm-hmm.
I like how I said I assume everybody has read this. Like everybody in the world. I don't think they have. But there was an article in Forbes or online on Forbes or whatever. Forbes did an interview. Forbes did an interview with Tony Khan of AEW fame, famous for making AEW. So for a lot of it, the article was very complimentary.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did an interesting job of portraying Tony Khan as this new upstart, ready to rival Vince McMahon, which of course isn't good. It's nonsense, but it makes for a good story, right?
Yeah.
So they did a fun article where they talked to Tony Khan, and they had some stuff in that article that we are going to discuss on today's show. So that's going to be the topic of today's show. So John, you've read the article?
I have indeed.
All right. What did you think of said article?
Well, it was basically a fluff piece, wasn't it? It was more about offering up all the nice stuff about Tony Khan and AEW and like his vision for the company and all that kind of thing. So there wasn't too much depth to it, I don't think. But
Yeah.
there was like a few things that kind of stuck out. Like obviously everyone sort of already knows that Tony Khan's a big wrestling fan and has all that history of like going to old ECW events and stuff, and I think that's the thing which I think a lot of wrestling fans sort of relate to when it comes to Tony Khan is, you know, he is one of us in a sense. Obviously one of us with a lot more money than the rest of us, but deep down inside he's a wrestling fan and he wants to see good wrestling. But then there's other stuff that kind of sticks out, which is a bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say concerning, but like
I would say concerning.
Yeah. It sticks out though, and I'm thinking that's what we're probably going to end up talking about.
Yeah, well, one thing I should mention that I've heard is the person who wrote the article wasn't a sports writer.
Okay.
He's a guy who does a lot of reporting on finances and money and wealthy people.
Mm-hmm.
So the article really was never going to be written from the point of view of, I mean, obviously it was never going to be written from the point of view of somebody who likes wrestling, because it feels like, with the exception of Tony Khan, people who like wrestling aren't billionaires, right?
Yeah.
But it means that a lot of the article was actually about Tony Khan and his father and finances and money and things like that. And even in the article, it didn't seem that telling. You know what I mean? Like you said, it was a bit of a fluff piece. It was kind of like, here's Tony Khan. Oh, he's a new underdog. Oh, this is his father. This is his company. He seems like a nice man. Wish him all the best. You know, that, in a nutshell, is a lot of the article. They talk about the TV deals that AEW have had with their networks. And they also mentioned that those kind of deals, while are good to generate money into this company, and you know, it's incredible the kind of money that is being put into this company by other television networks and stuff like that, is just but a blip in the water for the WWE, which is very interesting. But again, it's finances, you know, that's that kind of talk. Whenever they talk about that, they talked about the deals that AEW were able to get for their television, which were very big deals. I think the first one was like 170 million.
175 million, I believe.
And then the second one was like 40 something.
Yes, like an extra 40 on top of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got a new startup company, this is what is this, their second full year?
Yeah, I guess so. It started in 2019, so you're coming up on the 2-year anniversary.
Yeah, so that's pretty good for them to be bringing that crazy amount of money in, because, you know, businesses don't usually break even or make a profit in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
In their second year, they're making crazy TV deals and having a lot of faith with these TV executives. Now that's, commendable, very, very well played.
Mm.
But what got me is the part where they said that the company wasn't at the break-even point or at a profitable point at the moment because of a 10-figure deal with the video game company, whoever is
I
producing
think
the
it
video.
was an 8-figure deal, but that works out as at least $10 million.
That's what I'm getting confused. 8 figures, which would be at least 10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but like, let's be honest here. It's going to be more than 10 million.
Oh, yeah, guaranteed.
So that's what I find very interesting. And for a while, I thought, wow, they've spent over 10 million on this video game already. Whenever all we've had to show for it is one trailer, and then what was that thing you sent me with the Darby Allin scan?
Yeah, it was like just a brief clip to show what Darby Allin looked like in the game, and then another brief clip of like the in-game play as well as Darby Allin.
Yeah, and I gotta say, dude, for 10 million, I would have liked to see something better. That was not so good. I mean, it just looked like a game, but that didn't look any different from a game that's been released in the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
So you're like, okay, interesting. For a while, this part blew my mind that they've spent at least 10 million on a video game, and I find that very interesting that they spent so much money on a video game so already with no real sign of progression on the parts of the people you might want to persuade to buy your video game.
Mm-hmm.
There's been nothing shown except for those handful of trailers, nothing that really made people interested. There's been no news about it. And the more you carry on practice like this, the harder it is to be able to sell that game for a profit. Like we've said, there is a hardcore base of AEW fans who will probably buy an AEW video game. But now that we've seen the kind of hardcore numbers that they're getting, when the show moved to Friday nights temporarily, you could tell who the hardcore fans were because they stuck with it.
Yeah.
And that number was a lot lower than a lot of people thought it was going to be. And not all of those people are going to want to buy a video game at $50, $60 a pop, right? So how many video games do you have to sell to make at least 10 million back, given that you're not going to be getting all of that $60? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like at the moment, that's crazy. I think that's crazy. And I was like, why is nobody else talking about this? Because as you know, there's a good correlation between video game fans and wrestling fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who like wrestling are also into video games. And I thought, surely somebody else is going to be talking about this, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's got anything to say about the fact that they've sunk over 10 million into a video game already with nothing to show for it. Because if they have nothing to show for it now, let's be honest, dude. Even if they drip feed you stuff like this, character scan, but also like, come on, dude, a character scan, the motion capture bit, like, what are you talking about? What do you show me? Like, show me the fighting. What's in the game? What does it do? What are the modes? Exactly. Who's in it? Who could be in it? We don't know anything about this, right? So even if they drip feed you little videos for the next couple of months, it's going to be the end of the year before we even know what this show is about, right? Or this video game's about.
Yeah, at least.
At least. I would imagine it'll be well into 2022 before we even get a release date or anything like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they'll have sunk 3 years into this. And by next year, how many more millions is it going to cost, right?
Exactly. It's not going to stop costing money to develop it, so...
Exactly. It might even end up costing more money.
Yeah, why? You'd think so.
Because at some point, they're going to be like, we need to get this game out now.
We
need to get this game out as soon as we can so that we can capitalize on this, which doesn't always work. There's an awful lot of stories about video games being rushed to market before they're ready, and they have not been good. A case in point, almost every single 3D Sonic game. I mean, good God, man. Some of them are not so, and it's because they're rushed and they're broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. This whole video game thing threw me for a loop.
I mean, I will say I haven't really picked up any indication of them rushing it out yet. Like they've very obviously not announced a release date because they don't want to announce something and then, force themselves to release it at that time or end up disappointing fans who are expecting it at that time and having to delay it or whatever. So in that regard, they've been quite shrewd, and they've done the right thing. They've not set themselves up to fail that way, so they can kind of take their time with it. And as well, you kind of have to figure into the equation that they're starting from scratch here, whereas the WWE video games that come out each year, those are basically built on the same engine each year, and then kind of just added to and taken away from, modified and whatever. So they've got like a base to build on, whereas this, it's all new and all they've got to kind of figure it all out. So that's the good thing for them to be taking time with it. But like you say, it comes at a certain point where you've got to wonder how much time they can afford to take and how much money they can afford to spend on this without getting any kind of return from it.
That's another good point you raised, though. The fact that they're creating their own game engine. From what we've heard, they're not. I mean, other game engines exist that you could use as a template to work with, but they're building the code up totally from scratch.
Yep.
Right? Even the WWE stuff, at some point they figured out how to code that game, and then, they made tweaks and improved it and shit like that. But that takes time. It takes a long time to fully build a game from scratch. And there's a lot of teething problems that go with that because, you're making it from scratch. You have to check for bugs and stuff. Like, a lot of video games are often made on specific game engines, right?
Yeah.
Because it cuts the cost down significantly. But if you have a specific vision in mind and you absolutely have to get your vision out, then you're going to have to build it yourself. And we've seen what happened when AEW did that before. I'm not a fan. So from the gameplay footage they showed of that video game, I already knew, I'm not going to like this game.
I mean, it's hard to be too judgy about it because there's basically nothing there. We didn't really see a whole lot, but I think the fact that it showed that you could like interact with the environment to a certain extent, like the way like Darby managed to like do a coffin drop off the middle rope to the outside and that kind of thing. Like it kind of makes me hopeful that it might be pretty good. Like if they can make it playable and easy to pick up and everything. But again, like that video just essentially showed nothing really. No hint whatsoever.
That is true. That video showed very little to actually gauge anything on. But I mean that when you see the video footage of the game being played, of them like around the ring and stuff like this, the way the characters moved and the way they chain the moves together makes it look very much like the recent WWE games and the way they have been for the last couple of years, which isn't arcadey at all. You have to sit and learn that fucking game.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's because we've heard them talk about this video game before and they're very proud of it and they have their vision and it has to be just so. And they want it to look like, or they want it to feel and control like the old N64 games. But they also have an awful lot of ideas and inputs that they will want to put in. And it could end up with a game being super complicated. Yeah. Again, we don't know. Right? To me, that's what it looks like. But because they've told us nothing about this video game, we don't know. We don't know. They've sunk over $10 million into something that we just don't know about. Right? I, for one, am very skeptical about this because we have seen so many games just not happen or fall through or fall short or not reach deadlines. And, you know, we've seen this time and time again in the video game industry.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, right? Whoever is making that video game at some point won't give a shit about Kenny Omega's input into the game. They're going to be like, we need to get this game out so we can sell it. And that's not a knock on Kenny Omega. That's just the way it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Game companies have to release stuff, otherwise they go out of business.
Yep.
And if they're sat waiting for 3 years, the company themselves are probably, whoever is publishing that video game is going to be like, we need to get this game out, right? They're not going to want to sit around for 4 years farting around with a wrestling video game, right? Absolutely not. That's not happening. So I find all of this stuff very interesting. But then the thing that I find the most interesting is when I sat and thought about it, right? So at first I was really blown away by the fact that over $10 million is continuing to be spent in this video game that we know nothing about. But then I thought, wait a minute, how can that be the reason they're in the red? You know, they got $170 million from something plus another 40-something million dollars from the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Over $200 million, right?
Yeah.
Which you would think 10 million, not even a blip in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can they be short? What have they spent their money on?
It's a good question.
I know exactly what they spent their money on. Something we've talked about before on the show. All of their employees. Do you want me? I did some research. Do you want me to tell you how much regular standard people in AEW get, just as a standard for their contract to be on TV?
Yeah, I have no idea. So hit me up.
Do you want to have a little guess?
I'm gonna say conservatively, I'd say, I don't know, about 200,000.
You are off by 100,000.
Oh, really?
300,000.
Wow.
Yes. Why? Now you think about some of the people that are on that show that are green as grass.
Mm-hmm.
300,000 a year.
A lot of those people who don't even appear on Dynamite regularly.
Yeah, but they get paid.
Yeah.
They have a contract, like the way that independent contractors supposedly do with wrestling companies, where they still get paid for like pay-per-view appearances and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they get paid every week. They get a check. So 300,000 per year, guaranteed. That's a guarantee, not including bonuses from merch and pay-per-view deals.
And their roster is absolutely huge as well.
Huge. They're paying Joey Janela £300,000 a year.
Crazy.
What the fuck? No, I had heard the stories where AEW were paying people like 3 or 4 times more than they were getting regularly on the independents.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice. You want to support the people who work for you, but also you got to think about whether or not these people are worth that amount of money.
Yeah.
If you're giving them 3 or 4 times what they were making on the indies, why? Right?
Yep.
There's a good reason they're making that kind of money on the indies. So, if they're giving away at minimum £300,000 per year to all, just for the moment, let's just say all of their employees, right, or all of their contracted workers, and we're not going to include the main event. We're not going to include the new signings like the Big Show or Mark Henry, right? Don't worry about those guys. We're talking about the majority of the roster. That's got to be, I don't know what, 80 to 100 people. There's so many people.
Yeah.
There's so many.
I mean, some of them aren't on like proper contract deals, like guaranteed money. I know some still paid on per appearance kind of deals. Like a lot of the guys that they, the lower card guys and the ones they bring in for Dark and Elevation and all that kind of stuff. So I would say conservatively, maybe I'd probably guess around 50 or so, 50 to 60 maybe.
Okay, so like how many do you reckon it's 50 people who would be getting at least 30,000 a year.
300,000.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I knew this was gonna happen. I'm so bad at numbers. I'm like, I'm good at video games the rest, but reading numbers off a page, not so good. This is my weak point.
Yeah, I'd go with that then. Say about 50 or so.
Okay, now 50 times 300,000, right?
Yeah.
10 times 300,000 is 3 million. So times 3 million by 5 was that 15 million?
15 million, yeah.
15. So there you go. That's 15 million on, which is roughly the same amount of money they're spending on one video game to pay for most of their roster for 1 year. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the bare minimum. That's the very lowest full-time contract you can get in AEW. So, okay. That means they must be paying their main event guys pretty well.
You'd think so, yeah.
I mean, like Big Show and Mark Henry, they're coming in as consultants and as commentators, but they're not getting 300,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee they're not making 3,000, 100,000 pounds a year. I'd say they're making more than that.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything. Right?
But then you've got other guys like Christian and John Moxley and obviously all of the elite as well.
Wow. I would like to tell you about this. Yeah, there's more. So apparently I find this on a website called Sports Lister. I don't know how legit this is. So I told John before the show, I've got these numbers and they can't be real. It's nonsense, right? So I'm going to tell you these numbers. And if they're fake, then Sports Lister has got some explaining to do. But because it's AEW, you're like, I wouldn't put it past them, right?
Yeah.
So I've got the list of apparently the 10 highest paid wrestlers in AEW.
Okay.
We're going to play a game. Hooray. Everybody loves fun games, especially John, when he doesn't know they're coming.
Yeah.
Who do you think the top 10 highest paid AEW wrestlers are? Now, remember, this might not be like super, super up to date.
Yes.
But if you know generally AEW, you can have a good stab at this.
Okay. Well, I would say Kenny Omega has got to be the top of the pile.
Okay.
Obviously Cody Rhodes as well. Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Chris Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is there? Oh, John Moxley.
Mm-hmm. You've got them all right so far. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you say Cody?
Yes.
Yes, 5. You got 5 right.
Maybe Jake Hager?
No.
Damn. Okay. God.
Think about AEW.
Adam Page?
No.
Shit. Who else then? Miro?
No.
Oh damn.
Tell you?
Yeah. Put me out my misery.
All right. So I'm gonna read the list backwards from 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10. Now the let me see. 10 to 5 are all listed at 2 million.
What? That can't be right.
No. Well, now here's the thing. One of these people I know that's actually like 1.8 million. So I think they're rounding up. But 1.8 million. And when I tell you who the 1.8 million person is, you're going to tell me to get the fuck out of town. Right? I swear to God. I'm going to assume that the ones that are listed as 2 million are roughly 1.8 million, right? They're close to 2 million-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not a full 2 million. It's fine. Number 10, Pac.
I almost said Pac.
Right. So I mean, again, he's very popular in the independents. He was popular in the WWE. Mm-hmm. I could see how he could get himself a good contract, but like 2 million.
That's a lot of money.
He's pulled some strings there. Well played.
Yeah.
Number 9 apparently is the Young Bucks. They are also on 2 million.
Oh, okay.
But is that together or as a team?
You'd think, yeah, individually, surely.
We don't know. Number 8 was the Lucha Brothers. Again, 2 million, same deal.
Right.
Very interesting. Okay, could be, and like I would imagine the Young Bucks are definitely getting 2 million each.
Yeah,
But the Lucha Brothers might be getting. But even then, I would happily split 2 million with you.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
not complaining about that. That's fine. Number 7 is the one that was written down as 1.8 million, rounded up to 2 million. And when I tell you this, you're gonna say these numbers have to be fake. This list is fake. This can't be true. Ready?
Go on.
Nyla Rose.
What?
Right? You're like, get the fuck
Holy
out of here.
crap.
No, that can't. No way are they paying Nyla Rose 1.8 million a year.
It makes no sense.
That can't be. That can't be true. She's never on TV. She doesn't win anything. Even when she was a women's champion last year, 1.8 million.
That is, baffling.
Baffling. And we're number 7. No, number 6. They misspelled his name on Sports Sister, which it doesn't help their cause.
Yeah.
Because they called him Dusty Rhodes. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I think they're talking about Dustin Rhodes.
Well, they could still be paying Dusty Rhodes. Who knows?
What do you mean still paying him? They didn't pay him to begin with. He wasn't part of the company.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So I assume they mean Dustin Rhodes. Again, 2 million. And I'll be honest with you, dude, he's earned it.
I mean,
he's earned it. Goldust, yeah, he's had a career that's. I mean, I would pay that guy 1.8 million more than I would pay Nyla Rose 1.8 million.
yeah, but I think in terms of what he's brought to AEW, I mean, aside from the fact, okay, yes, he is like pretty much their head coach, and he's being responsible for helping train up a lot of the new talent that they've been bringing in. But like in terms of what he brings to the TV product, he's nothing.
But again, if you look at it like the whole package, if you look at him like a safe hand you can have on TV that you can occasionally work angles with, if you look at him like backstage as a producer and a mentor to the younger ones, and if you look at him as a trainer and stuff like this, you're like, all right, well, he's doing a lot of stuff. I can see why 1.8 million. Nyla Rose. What? Doesn't do anything. Inside or outside. It doesn't make any sense. With number 5. Okay. Nyla Rose wasn't the only woman on this list.
Okay.
Can you guess who number 5? Because you guessed the other ones. Can you guess who number 5 is?
Gotta be Britt Baker, surely.
No, it doesn't.
What?
Think about it. Think about who the only person it could possibly be.
What the?
You know it.
It's not.
Yes,
It's not Vicky Guerrero, is it?
No, it's not Vicky Guerrero.
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Oh, it's fucking Brandy Rhodes, isn't it?
It's Brandy Rhodes.
Good grief.
Brandy Rhodes is getting 2 million from a year from this company. Now again, she doesn't do anything on TV.
No.
Right? I know she does some stuff. She's doing that heels thing or whatever. I know she does some stuff backstage. The stuff on TV is not worth 2 million.
Yeah, no.
Unbelievable. Now, of course, number 4 is Cody Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
So that, by the way, 3 in a row for the Rhodes. They're doing pretty well. Cody's bringing in 3 million. So apparently, Cody, Omega, and Chris Jericho are all bringing in 3 million.
Okay.
Jon Moxley is the highest paid. According to this website, Jon Moxley is the highest paid wrestler in that company. Which means he makes more than 3 million a year. How much do you think? Because I had to check this. I was like, I had originally heard that he's been paid 1 million by AEW, and it was rumored there was a lot more than that. Right? No, if they're paying Nyla Rose 1.8 million, clearly Moxley's making more than $1 million.
Yeah.
All right. You want to take a guess as to how much he's making?
7 million?
Oh my goodness. 6 million. So close. Right? But also 6 million. Are we starting to get a clearer picture here?
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy money.
Baffling. What? No, again, I would imagine some of these numbers are, they've got to be inflated somewhat, right? But I don't think they're that far away.
But the thing is, I'm looking at some of WWE's top paid guys for comparison.
Yeah.
This is the list from last year, apparently, where you've got Brock Lesnar in at number 1 with 10 million. He was getting paid. Roman Reigns was number 2 with 5 million.
Yeah.
So if John Moxley's getting paid more than Roman Reigns is, what is going on?
Right. Isn't that baffling?
Yeah.
Baffling. And here's the thing about the WWE, like we've covered with AEW, is that that's the guaranteed money, but Roman Reigns is going to make more than 5 million from appearances and other contractual obligations and stuff like this, bonuses, pay-per-views,
Yeah.
etc. He's going to make more than 5 million, but he's guaranteed 5 million. Right?
Yeah.
And he's a main eventer and has been for years.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start in that company making 5 million. He didn't start in that company making 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Took him a long time to get there, right? And to be fair, took Moxley a long time to get there too. And he's there now in a different company. Fair play to him. But come on, man. Like you said, WWE is a multi-million-dollar corporation that's bringing in money. And one of their highest paid regular stars who works, and this is no knock on Moxley because he's a busy boy, but Roman Reigns in a calendar year will work more in one company than John Moxley will.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns will do more shows in the WWE than Moxley will in 1 year of AEW.
Absolutely.
Now Moxley, of course, does a lot of work in other companies. Fair enough, right? He could easily match the dates that Roman Reigns does, but that's additional income.
Yeah.
That's on top of the 6 million that he's been paid for. What is it now? 2 or 3 days a week of work.
Well, essentially, yeah. Depending on the,
if even.
Yeah, it's probably works out as once a week at the moment.
6 million to go to work once a week.
God damn it.
No. Tony Khan said the video game is the one thing that's losing him money. I don't think that's true. I think it's the ridiculous contracts he's giving out to people. And like I said, I do agree with the fact that he should pay his employees well. And Tony Khan seems a great guy, lovely boss, and he does seem to treat his employees really well.
Yeah.
That's admirable. It doesn't make him a good businessman.
Well, do you want to know something that I read during my research for this?
Oh, yes, please.
So, as part of their deal with TNT, or the when the deal got sort of re-upped in, I think it was late or early 2020. So before that, TNT were covering the production costs, but part of this new deal was that AEW would cover them themselves from there on. And that apparently works out roughly at about $500,000 per week, which comes to about $26 million per year that they're spending on that as well. And this was taken before the pandemic hit, so obviously they've spent the last year in Daly's place and not really traveled over the country and stuff, and had those massive production costs. But when you consider how big of an effect that will have once they do start touring again, that's going to be another thing that's surely going to add to their financial or potential financial difficulties as well. Because obviously, they will be making money from people buying tickets to shows and stuff and buying merchandise and whatever. But that's still a lot of money they're spending week after week, which they haven't been spending this year, which is probably a big reason why it's only the video game which is keeping them in the red right now.
You raised some good points. Once they start going on the road again, are they going to be able? How many fans do you have to get to bring in, be able to cover that cost per show? And that's if they're doing it live. And because it costs so much, they're probably going to start doing it live and taping a show at the same time.
Well, that's the plan. Apparently, they're Tony Khan said that ideally he wants to kind of have 2 shows a week, basically, and tape Elevation before. Which way around is it? I think he wanted to tape Elevation before Dynamite and then Dark before Rampage. But Rampage probably won't be a live show each week either, so there's that to consider as well, I guess.
But that's the thing. If they're taping 2 shows a week, because they have so much more content now, they have 2 shows and 2 YouTube shows. So if the shows cost £500,000 to produce, or $500,000 to produce per episode, right? It would make sense for them to tape 2 episodes at once, because then they're saving money for next week.
Yeah.
Right? But if they're taping 2 shows a week, that's 100,000, or no, that's $1 million.
Yeah.
So they're not saving any money.
Pretty much, no. And they're not really making any money, surely, from the YouTube shows.
No, no way are they making money off those YouTube shows.
So, you kind of wonder what the gains are there, aside from giving them an excuse to bloat out the roster and, keep hiring more people.
Right. Like, honest to God, what is the point of that YouTube show? Because it's not bringing it, like, they call it their developmental system, which is nonsense. Because a startup company like this doesn't get a developmental system. The Monster Factory or whatever training schools that Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall run, those are your developmental cases, right?
Yeah.
You don't go showing that stuff on TV or on YouTube or whatever. That in itself is nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, there's no way for them to ever make that money back from YouTube.
No, I mean, just looking at last week's episode of Dark, they have 260-odd thousand views. So
and how long's that show?
That one was 1 hour and 16 minutes, but I think they typically longer than that. But I figure once Rampage starts, they're going to have to start cutting down the time of that and Elevation as well. So, because both those shows were sort of getting into the almost 2-hour mix at a certain point, which, that's
ridiculous.
Too long.
It's way too much. This is another thing I don't get. Why are AEW so happy to oversaturate their own market? Nobody watches all the shows that the WWE put out every week because it's too much.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch Raw and SmackDown together. Most people don't bother. They just apparently watch SmackDown. Like it's 5 hours of wrestling TV is a lot, and that's not including NXT and Superstars and Main Event and all the other plus the 3-hour pay-per-view they do every month. You know what I mean? This isn't including all that. It's a lot to take in. And AEW are now they want to put a 3rd hour of TV on TV plus their 2-hour YouTube show. So they're talking 7 hours of content.
Well, I think part of the mindset behind that, though, is to create as much content as possible so that they can then do sort of, subscription service like the WWE Network, in a sense, where they can put all of that content up for people to see, whenever they want. But at the same time, once considering like all these Dark and Elevations are on YouTube, they have to take them off YouTube first to make that worthwhile. So
yes, plus people have already seen it for free on YouTube. Yeah,
and they know it's essentially not got much to do with like the major storylines on Dynamite, and it's mostly just random wrestlers on it as well, like no real big matches or anything. So
right, like you said, sometimes they'll have the big people on there, but never because it leads to anything.
No,
because you have to watch Dynamite. Dynamite's the show you're supposed to watch. They can't have other angles on the YouTube show. Well, we say that, but they do it anyway. They do all sorts of bullshit on the Young Bucks YouTube show and that carries over to Dynamite somehow. And you're like, well, I don't watch this show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch the YouTube shows, and now I don't watch Dynamite because I don't, because it's too much, and now they're giving us even more, and you're like, is that what the people wanted? I can see the people wanting a company, the rival of WWE. I can see the people wanting a video game based on this because the people involved seem to know a lot about video games, right? Fair enough. But do they want 7 hours of content from this new company?
Yeah.
No. Because like you said, dude, look at the YouTube numbers. Look at the actual TV numbers.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want that much. They're not going to add in a third hour is going to be more expenses.
Well,
they're like doing it all way too quick, and they're doing it backwards, which is, when you think about it, it's par for the course for AEW. You know what I mean?
You got to consider as well, like Rampage, they're essentially putting in that same time slot that Dynamite's been in for the last 4 weeks, like a Friday night 10 o'clock start, like right after SmackDown's finished, where I think I read somewhere that there was no real correlation between fans turning over from SmackDown into Dynamite during these last 4 weeks. So that's something to be worried about. But then there's also the fact that the ratings as well have sort of averaged at about 500,000 views over those 4 weeks, and around a 0.2 on the key demo as well, which is below what they were doing on the Wednesday night. So you kind of wonder, like, how beneficial this third hour, this Rampage show is going to be to them. Like, if it's not being watched by the masses, what's the point? It's
exactly
just more expense, more content that people are missing out on, which when it bleeds over into Dynamite and you're expected to know stuff and you don't because you didn't watch it, it just, I don't know, it puts me off the product almost.
It's just too much, man. It's way too much. But like, if you think about how Dynamite is their main show, the show they've been showing, they've been bragging about for a whole year and a half, almost 2 years. And that show, when it's on a Friday night spot, is getting 500,000 views. Their main show on a Friday night on that spot, the spot that they're looking to put their B show into, it's only 500,000. Once Dynamite moves back to Wednesdays and gets his regular time slot again, you're going to see the numbers go up. But how many of those people are going to come back on a Friday night? I don't think it's going to be right. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot, dude. And and then they're going to, if they were smart, then they would look at the numbers and think, okay, now we're wasting loads of money on these production things. Even though we're taping 2 episodes or whatever, we're really not taping a whole lot more than a week's worth of content, in a week, which is not cost effective. They're going to realize that all this stuff's going to catch up with them. And somebody's going to say, we've gone a little bit too far. We're going to have to cancel one of these shows. Ask Eric Bischoff what it's like to run 2 wrestling shows a week. He's going to tell you it was one of the shittiest things we ever did.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of shitty things, because by that point, running 2 shows a week, it gets so hard. He said it was nigh on impossible because everybody wants to be on Nitro. So now you're going to convince all these other guys, include, Hall and Nash, notorious for, taking it easy sometimes, to fucking, now you got to turn up to work and you got to do this, but we also got to book all this shit. So whatever happens on Monday has to make sense on Thursday. Yeah. And then whatever happens on Thursday has to travel over to make sense back on Monday. And we can't really, we can tape them to some extent, but what happens if somebody gets injured?
Mm-hmm.
If we show a tape of him on Thursday, but he's injured and he's not going to be there on Monday, fuck, right? That's ruined. That's out of pocket. We can't use that. How does this factor into pay-per-views? How do we, it's a lot harder to build, as the WWE can attest to. It's a lot harder to build shit with 2 shows than it is with 1, because in 1 show you can easily build your way to a monthly pay-per-view, but with 2 shows you're getting overexposed, and that's why they did the brand split, to keep things different between the 2 shows. Because otherwise it would just be too much. To me, the AEW are doing too much, and it's good that they're ambitious, but they're doing too much without ever seeing any of this return. The money's not coming back in. Their roster is so big. They've never cut anybody. They've probably let 4 contracts expire since they've started, or let people go of their own accord. But they don't fire anybody, except
The only
Jimmy
one
Havoc, I think.
yeah.
But there's a good reason for that. They don't fire people. They don't let people go. So they're not saving money that way. And again, the WWE were monsters for letting go of people in the middle of a pandemic. I agree with that. That's totally true. But at the same time, they saw a lot of the roster that they weren't using and probably had little intention of actually using. And so they thought, well, we can save ourselves £300,000 a year if we cut these guys. But AEW's not doing that. They're saying, no, let's hire those guys for more than 300,000, right? So like we said, 300,000 a year for most of these other schmucks, millions for these main eventers that they have. Fair enough. But again, that's not factoring in people like the Big Show and Mark Henry, who definitely get pretty good contracts, but also guys like JR and Tony Schiavone, who are absolutely guaranteed to get good contracts, and they deserve them. Like you said, Christian, Sting.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, right? I bet Taz costs a pretty penny. All of these old guys who have name recognition are going to be able to command a bigger paycheck than everybody else. And if the guy giving those paychecks is already giving out huge paychecks, it's not gonna take a whole lot of arm twisting to get him to give you something really, really big. And some people would say fair play. If you can take this guy's money, why not? But somebody's got to be able to look at these numbers and look at the books and say, we are pissing out way, way too much money. Way, way too much money. And we're not bringing stuff back in. Remember we had that question about the TNA guys who come to work on AEW TV. Who's paying them for that? Is that a AEW like pay on appearance thing? Because TNA didn't write that shit in their contracts. Who's paying for this stuff? The cinematic matches they did, the Matt Hardy thing, or the Darby Allin stuff. It's shot beautifully, like a film. How expensive are films? Really fucking expensive. These are different cameras. These are different editors. There's different ambience. So you have to set shit up in a different way. Like all of this stuff costs money. People are always coming up with like cars and trucks and stuff. Stuff just happens on that show, right? And they're like, "Don't worry, we'll pay for it." Right? They will pay for it, but at some point, you gotta stop. You gotta realize that you're pissing a lot of money away. Now, like we briefly discussed earlier, Tony Khan's worth what, $8 billion?
Well, his dad is. His dad is the source of all the money, and he's just sort of due to inherit, I guess, once his dad passes away. But he's obviously, according to the article, I think he's been out there and kind of earned his own way for a little bit before getting a position with his dad's company. Like he looked after Fulham over here in the UK football club.
How'd that go?
Well, not very well, if you ask most Fulham fans. But then the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. I think he's got involvement with them too.
How are they doing?
I have no idea.
You can take a guess.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what I mean. That's a lot, right? There's money is coming. Obviously, Tony Khan himself isn't going to be worth £8 billion, right?
No.
Not all of that $8 billion is going into AEW. But if you think of his father, who is running these different companies, there's obviously not going to be, like, not even half of that is going to be going to AEW.
No, nowhere near.
No, exactly, right? 'Cause he's got his own shit to worry about. He's got the football club that he really wants to keep and make that a profit. And he's got a lot of other stuff going on, right? So the AEW thing really is a side project for Tony Khan. So when you think about it, we were all joking about how he's got he's the son of a billionaire, yada, yada. He is, but his resources are still limited in the terms of producing a yearly, weekly, episodic TV show that's supposed to tour around the country. He's still got a limited budget. It happens that his limited budget is still 60 times more than anybody else's, right?
This is the thing. It's more of a safety net than a budget he has to worry about, because if he does overspend, well, just go up and ask daddy for more money, I guess. So,
but at some point, that's only going to get you so far. And Shad Khan's going to look at this and go, I've already lent you so much money. Don't you think that at some point we're gonna have to pull the plug on this. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much he's willing to give out, I think, until Tony Khan is able to inherit it all or his share of it. You know what I mean? There's a finite amount of money to be spent there, and they're already spending a lot of money. So what did we say? 1 billion was 1,000 millions.
Yes.
Right. So we've already made it clear that they've spent 10 million on the show. What did you say production costs would be roughly for a year for one TV show?
For one TV show, 500,000 per week, 26 million per year. 26
million plus the whatever, say 10 million, but obviously it's more than that.
I think we said it was 15 million.
Okay, let's say 50 million, although it's probably more than that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's not even including like all the big stars and stuff, is it? So.
All right, so that's 20 million, 26 million for the show, 15 million for most of the people on the show.
Yeah.
And then some number for the video game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say 10 million, but we know that that's significantly more.
Yeah.
So Moxley, let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 21, 27. According to this, the top 10 wrestlers in AEW are making 27 million.
Jesus.
Holy shit.
How are they profitable?
27 million. So, that's almost more than twice what all the regular guys are making. We don't know what guys at Christian are making, but it's fair to say they're probably making a good million. Right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's the thing. That list, that's top 10 list of top earners. There's got to be...
It stops at 2 million, right?
Yeah,
roughly
there's got to
2
be
million.
Still a bunch between like 1 million and 2 million.
Right. So you got those other guys. There's got to be another 10 to 15 people that are probably on a, like JR and Christian. Sting, I think Sting's got to be more than 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you take those 10 names we just mentioned, right? At roughly 1 million each. That's another 10 million on top of that.
Yep.
And that's a conservative estimate. I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
Right? So, all right, 26 million per production. That we're not going out of the thing. 15 million for some of your wrestlers. 27 million for your main event. 10 million for the other people. 10 million for the video game. I would imagine there's going to be plenty more expenses on top of that, right?
Yeah.
But for the sake of an argument, let's just count these numbers up, okay? So what's 26 plus 27?
Oh, jeez.
I
like
can do this. 27, 29, 30.
53?
53. I'm going to say that's right. 53, 60. I think it's 88 million per year.
Okay, now.
88 million per year. And this is rough estimates that we're coming up with. But like we've laid it out very clearly how much money, that's how much money we know about. Like I said, there's probably all these other contracts or different things going on that we don't know about where they're losing money. 88 million a year, right? Now I know that 1,000 million is a lot. That's a lot, right? But
yes.
If you're pissing out 88 million per year, right?
Well, yeah, but like we do have to factor in that they're bringing in money as well. So
right, but like we said, this is a conservative estimate that we don't know. Like it's probably much more than this.
Well, I don't know. I'd say it's probably...
I think it's probably 100 million.
I think when you take off their incomings from their outgoings, it's probably less than 80 million. I'd say it's more like, I don't know, like 50 million or something like that.
Okay.
But then that is hard to tell because we don't know how much money they take from live events and from pay-per-view buys and merchandise and blah blah blah. There's tons of money coming in, I'm sure, but surely not as much as what's going out.
Well, let's put it this way: 50 million, which seems actually pretty likely. Right? What did they say in that article? 8-figure deficit into the video game.
Yeah.
Doesn't it sound likely it's about 50 million?
You see, I don't know if that's how much, video games cost these days to produce. So
They cost a lot.
that sounds like a hell of a lot, though.
But AAA, the big companies will cost a lot. They're going to be 100 million, right? If Tony Khan and his company are stupid enough to go straight to a AAA company right off the bat to develop this, they're gonna sink a lot of money into it.
Yeah.
100 million, I would imagine, does like a Grand Theft Auto or one of those games,
Right.
Just Cause, the big open world games. But they're usually hand built engines themselves, or they build stuff that they need in that game, right? I think 50 million doesn't sound too far off.
Okay.
For the video game, and in these days, these climates,
Yeah.
Especially given the fact that they seem to want to big it up and want to make it bigger than it could ever possibly be, which again, admirable, but I feel like people might see that kind of person coming. Oh, it'll cost 50 million to make this video game.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is, and like I said before, I'm not a very good mathematician, so some of my numbers may be considerably off, but just off rough estimates, off the top of my head, by a guy who would consider himself to be number dyslexic. I don't know what that means, but that's what I would consider myself. And, we've totted up some numbers there. And again, we could be way off. I don't think we are way off. I think a lot of those numbers seem to add up, and that they are spending a lot of money without recouping half of that money. Like we said, if they're spending 88 million and they're getting money back in, where their deficits are like 50 million, that's still not good.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of wiggle room there. And if it was a company like the WWE, they would soon figure out how to see if they, I would imagine, looked at a 50 million deficit and said, fuck this. Who the fuck has spent 50 million on stuff? They can save money, but they're hardly saving like 50 million a year. But like if what did the WWE release? 6 or 7 people last a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
If Tony Khan released 7 people, 6 or 7 people, £300,000 a pop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a couple of million he can save.
But instead he just keeps hiring people.
And then not using them except on YouTube. It's ass backwards. It doesn't make any sense. He's making too much stuff when I don't think there's a demand for it. And there are clearly wrestlers there who are willing to take advantage of his generosity. They're going to bankrupt this guy. And I think some of them really believe that they're trying to do something good. And I guarantee you some of them are just there to take that money.
Joey Janela. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, it's a hell of a cough there, buddy. You might want to get that checked out. Seriously, though, like, what the fuck? Joey Janela has a contract where he'll make more money than we will make in our lifetimes.
That is the most depressing thought.
And, here's I mean, I'm going to say it. Doesn't deserve it.
Nope.
I think we deserve that 300,000 way more. And I don't appreciate him taking advantage of a rich billionaire like that just to get it. He didn't, it's not fair.
Yeah.
We're the only podcast in town, and we're out here, slumming it, doing the best we can. Where's our 300,000 a year?
Exactly. We deserve it way more than Joey.
I think once you realize that once people hear that the podcast suddenly gets very pro AEW, like, you know what? I think Tony Khan's really nice and everybody loves him. Then you know that Tony Khan is suddenly giving us our 300,000 a year contract, But until then, we're going to keep speaking the truth, or a rough approximation of the truth. Is there anything else you want to say about this whole financial situation?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it pretty well, to be fair. It's obviously they don't have the starting point money that WWE have and like have built up over the last 40 odd years or whatever. So you kind of want to give them some leeway because they are still a relatively new company who's still growing and everything. But at the same time, that's more reason to be cautious, surely, than like overstretching yourself, which is what it seems like they're doing at the moment. And that's the kind of thing which is going to lead or potentially lead to trouble down the road if things do take a bad turn somewhere. So, yeah, it is worrying. But like we said as well, with like $8 billion potentially behind him, like even if it's just a fraction of that as a safety net, like they'll probably be safe. But even still, if for a company to survive and prosper, it needs to kind of stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on handouts from someone else.
Exactly. It's never. They need to figure out how to be profitable by themselves, which again blows my mind that they thought the way to be profitable is to hire everybody without firing anybody to big money contracts and then over saturate the market to a point where people won't even watch our own product.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's bizarre. So, like, to give AEW credit, they still do get decent TV numbers. You know, they're getting all right YouTube numbers, but YouTube is not bringing in a whole lot of money for anybody anyway. They are able to be on TV. They are able to sell merchandise pretty well. A lot of the wrestlers are very popular. They're able to get decent pay-per-view numbers. But they can bring in some money on pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
They can bring in millions, right? So fair play to that. But if you're, what do they have? 4 or 5 pay-per-views per year.
Yeah, I think it's 4 per year at the moment.
Right. Well, what do they bring in per pay-per-view? 6 million?
This is gonna require the calculator again.
But here's the thing, right? It's not gonna be 20 million.
No, it's more
right?
like because they're getting like 125,000 buys or whatever. Say that's for £60 a pop. That's like 7.5 million right there.
Let's round it up to 8. 8 million times 4. It's gonna be 32 million.
Yes.
Which is pretty good. Add on, attendance figures and merchandise and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still not breaking even.
Yeah.
Because like you said, them going on the road is going to cost production and shit as well. To me, it seems like they're ambitious, and I give them credit. They've been very successful, but that could end up biting them in the ass. Like you said, I think they're reaching too far, too quickly when there's not a demand for it. We shall wait and see what happens. We are, we want to see what happens. We don't want them to go out of business, but we also don't want them to fucking piss money up a wall, which is what they're doing. So we'll wait and see what happens. I imagine we're not going to see anything that relates to this in the next couple of years. You know what I mean? Like we said, Tony Khan's got $8 billion to play with, but at some point, the money's going to dry up, and he's going to be having a bad time. That's what I think. But we'll wait and see what happens. That's the show. I hope you guys liked it. It's all about numbers and things that we didn't expect to talk about too much today. But here it is. We did some quick maths, and we came out all the better for it. Tony Khan, if you want us to be your financial advisors, it's going to cost £301,000 per year. Well, we can get paid more than Joe Janela. And, well, yeah, I guess that's the show. We're going to be back next week with something else that probably has less numbers in it. And,
I hope so. I'm not very good with numbers.
Me too. This is we didn't expect to be talking about numbers on a wrestling show. But, yeah, that's it. We're going to see you guys next week. So make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.